Bonjour. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all as happy as I am on this beautiful rainy Monday. Not my favorite day, by the way. Donc, Madame la greffière.
Your Worship, we have an agenda before us to be adopted.
Donc, est-ce que l'ordre du jour, est-ce qu'il y a des changements? Are there any changes? So could I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda? Conseiller Kingston, Conseillère Leblanc. Any questions about the agenda? If not, we will go to a show of hands, right? Donc, tout le monde est d'accord. Merci. Motion carried.
Next is declaration of conflict of interest et déclaration des conflits d'intérêts.
Did we do the adoption of the minutes,
sure.
September the 22nd?
In the wrong meeting, one is before, one is after. The adoption of minutes of September 22nd, 2025.
Merci. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the minutes? Conseiller Kingston encore. Conseiller Légère. All in favor, show of hands. Voilà. Motion carried. Merci.
Now it's a declaration of conflict of interest et déclaration des conflits d'intérêts.
Est-ce qu'il y a des conflits d'intérêts? Non, j'en vois pas. Merci.
First up is, under new business, is a new bylaw respecting the proceedings of Moncton City Council, being bylaw A425, and our city solicitor and deputy CAO, Nick Robichaud, will open it.
Bonjour, Nick.
Bonjour. Thank you, Shelley. So we have some proposed changes to the procedural bylaw before you. We've provided the old version, the new version. We've kind of tracked changes. We've highlighted the changes that we've made in this CRF. It's a lot of housekeeping items. A couple of these substantive items that we have changed, though, we've created a new, or we're in the process of creating a new public hearing policy. So we would remove that as a schedule from the bylaw, and we'll provide it'll provide a little more detail into the public hearing process. Now that we've had a few kind of more complicated public hearings over the past couple of years, we realize we need to tweak that process a little bit. And by removing it from the bylaw and turning it into a policy, it's still council approved, but it allows us to be a little more flexible in how we make changes to that process. We've also added some items related to First Nations, so a land acknowledgement, and also just some language around some other forms of acknowledgement that we can do throughout the year. Those proposals are currently being vetted by our kind of local First Nations groups. I think they provided us feedback as recently as last Friday, so there will be some minor tweaks that they've suggested to what we've proposed. France is there. She can quickly run through a couple of the major changes, but this is really just kind of a first conversation with council to make sure that you are comfortable with what we're proposing, and also to hear from you on any changes that you think we should make to the procedural bylaw. These are your meetings, after all. So if you have any thoughts, suggestions, we can talk about those. We did circulate the bylaw, I think, at least a week ago, so people have had an opportunity to provide any comments they wanted to. And then we're seeking direction from council that we're on the right track, and then we will bring kind of the more finalized version to the next committee of the whole meeting in November, hopefully for council approval or at least a further discussion. So, France, did you have anything to add? No? Okay.
Donc, il n'y a rien ajouté, France, c'est beau. Merci. Conseiller Steve, you wish to move the recommendation?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I have a
Il n'y a
question.
pas de motion? Well, on my sheet there is.
Yeah, there is a motion.
There is a motion, so could I have a mover and a seconder for the motion? Conseiller Kingston, Conseiller Légère, merci. Donc, go ahead, Conseiller Steve.
Thank you. My question is just in regards to the acknowledgement section. So I understand what the acknowledgement is, and the proposal is that would be mentioned at the beginning of every session. And then just a little bit further down on 27.2 and 27.3, I wonder if you could just help me understand the difference between that. In 27, subsection 2, it says council welcomes during every regular public and committee of the whole meeting voices of the Indigenous people. And then in 27.3, it says that in the month of June is National Indigenous History Month, and that September 30th is National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. I understand that. To further acknowledge Indigenous people, Council welcomes and will prioritize the voices of the Indigenous people during the regular public and committee of the whole meetings held annually in June and September. Would you just help me understand, is it 12 months of the year that 27.2 says, and then there's additional things during June and September? Just help me understand that.
C'est un bouton s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Councillor Steves. The idea was to invite them year-round to council chambers if they wish to attend and make presentations to council on various items. But the 27.3, with respect to the specific months like June and September, was because these are to recognize and acknowledge them specifically with respect to these months being celebrated as National Indigenous People Day, and September 30th marks the National Date of Truth and Reconciliation. So it does specify like to prioritize their voices, so make a special invitation to them, extend a special invitation to them for them to attend council chamber during those specific dates. So that's the only difference between the two paragraphs.
Okay, it just sounded to me in 27.2, and of course, we're just scrubbing it here to try to understand. It sounded like they were coming to the microphone every public and committee of the whole meeting.
No, they'd be invited to come and attend
It's an
council.
open
They're
invitation.
Yes, that's the idea. If that's not clear enough, we can certainly review that language and make sure that that's the intent of
Sure.
of that
Well,
paragraph.
certainly let other councillors chime in. It sounded like that to me. Open invitation perhaps is a word that would make it a little more clear in that first one, and certainly supportive of June and September for the reasons that are already listed. Thank you.
Merci, Conseiller Steves. Are there any other questions? I don't see any, so we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. Conseiller Bourgeois.
Je pense pas que ça devrait venir comme une surprise, mais j'en ai une douzaine. Là. Ça fait j'irai avec 2 ou 3 à la fois. Là. Je veux juste rappeler au Conseil, I think it's important to note, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but this is the only bylaw we must adopt. In the Local Governance Act, we must adopt a procedural bylaw. I suspect that somewhere else in the provincial legislation, we need to adopt a zoning bylaw. But other than that, we must adopt a procedural bylaw. So just to set the tone for how important this is, although ironically, it's probably the only bylaw that most of our citizens don't care about. But it's important to have a good procedural bylaw in order to help us make the best decisions. So if there's any hindrances in the existing bylaw, we should get rid of them and simplify how we do things without going overboard and having a free-for-all either. I think, first of all, I'll go through the document as I go. I think we should have a definition of committee of the whole. There is none in the definitions. We mention it several times in the rest of the bylaw, but we define audience, we define city council, et cetera, but we don't define what a committee of the whole is. And it leads me to my first question is, why do we have a committee of the whole, like today? Why don't we discuss? Last week, we had a meeting that didn't last 2 hours. We could have taken these 3 items today, added to the public meeting last week. It would have been the same kind of discussion. Now we have a committee of the whole. We are going to discuss these, maybe in more detail, but we could have discussed it last week. So and we're going to discuss, and we're going to have a resolution, a motion. It would have to be ratified in public. We'll have to have another presentation on it. So somewhere along the line, some of the items in the committee of the whole are duplicated because we have to treat them at the full public council meeting. So my question is, and we didn't have that, if you remember, Conseiller Thériault, between 2008, 2012. We just had a bunch of committees, Finance Committee, we had a few ad hoc committees like snow removal and stuff like that. They came back to council every once in a while with recommendations, and if not, maybe an annual report. But we didn't have a committee of the whole. And then all of a sudden in 2012, we eliminated, the mayor at the time eliminated all the committees, and he appointed the committee of the whole to discuss these things. So I think council has to get its head around whether or not we want committee of the whole. It might be a special committee of the whole every once in a while to discuss one or two big ticket items. That would be fine. It might take us 3 or 4 hours. But I fear that we have it too often, discussions at the committee of the whole that we should have in full public. And this is the reason why. Do we have any media? No. But when we have a public meeting, we have media. We also have Rogers Broadcasting, so people can follow us. Do we have Rogers Broadcasting, the committee of the whole? Does any?
We no longer have Rogers filming. It's all on YouTube.
Okay.
And
So
Rogers picks it up at 9 PM on the meeting day.
Gotcha. Would Rogers pick up this meeting?
I don't believe so,
Yeah.
just the public
So
meetings.
there's the fundamental difference in terms of democracy and transparency, that we discuss some of these items in details outside of the public realm. It is officially a public meeting, but there's nobody here from the media or from the public. So there's a lapse there. I think we'd be better off to maybe some of these minor items. I don't know who makes the decision and how easy that would be. Committee of the whole. I don't think we should have committee of the whole, period, but that's my preference. Anyways, we need to have that discussion. I don't know if this is the time to do it. It might last just half an hour on that question itself, but I'm throwing it out there. I don't think we should have committee of the wholes. But we should have specific committees who would come to council, social inclusion, democracy, whatever the committees are, finance committee, I don't know, come up with recommendations to council whenever they have something to tell council. We'll deal with that on the next item, but that's my first point. Do we discuss this now, or do we discuss it later? I'm open either way.
It's up to council. What is the wish of council? Do you wish to discuss, debate that question now? You can do that if you wish. Okay. We can.
If you want to discuss it.
Yes. I do have a question, though, for Conseiller Bourgeois. You weren't there, but is there anyone, maybe Conseiller Butler, who would remember why did we go, or maybe staff person, why did we go from the various committees to the committee of the whole?
I get the answer for it if you want it.
Huh?
At that time, we had a committee, that was a finance committee. The big ticket item on the agenda for council of the day around 2012 was the downtown center, now called the Avenir Center. And the finance committee started asking questions on the financial sustainability. There was a unanimous decision of council to go ahead with the downtown center on a 25 million, 25 million, 25 million federal, provincial, municipal, and 25 million private sector naming rights and everything else. And that was unanimous support. But then some of these pieces started to unravel. So the finance committee started to question it. And George, full credit, he had the Avenir Center on top of his mind, and he wanted to leave that for council, and eventually he won the day. But the process leading to it, instead of having a finance committee that would question, and it was his nominations to the finance committee. So, and there were smart cookies like Mike Mann and I think Larry Nelson was there. So very top-notch people. Greg Landry, they started asking questions. So he sort of eliminated the committees, because of that one and replaced it with Committee of the Whole. So we still discussed at the Committee of the Whole, the Avenir Center, but it wasn't the Finance Committee. He got, I wouldn't say got rid of those people, but that's basically what happened.
OK, c'est bon. Merci, conseiller Bourgeois. Est-ce que, conseiller Kingston, do you wish, on va procéder à la discussion, là,
Oui.
ça va? Donc, conseiller Kingston, do you wish to speak?
Merci, Madame Mattis. Thank you. Thank you, and to Councillor Bourgeois. Merci, Madame Mattis. Maybe the idea would be to discuss perhaps at a further date. I wasn't planned to discuss the elimination of the CUTW today. I don't know if there are precedents, Nick, in NB government's acts on this. Other cities, have they done this? If we're going to eliminate a large meeting on the agenda side, before I can even discuss it or think about it, I like to get your view on that.
Yeah, and we can provide a bit of research on how different municipalities approach Committee of the Whole, or whether they have separate committees. And we had, in addition to the Finance Committee, we had a Legal and Administrative Matters Committee or something like that. So we had two main committees that kind of dealt with issues, and I guess now those have merged into the Committee of the Whole that we have today, and I don't recall the reasons behind that. I just in response to something Councillor Bourgeois said about there's no definition of Committee of the Whole in the bylaw, which is true. Under Section 98 in the bylaw, though, we kind of give the purpose of the committee, or the types of items. We try to delineate the types of items that we would discuss in a committee meeting. So non-statutory public hearings for information, receive delegations and submissions. The committee could meet in private if they had to, receive information from administration on emergent items, and discuss and debate policy matters to formulate recommendations for council. So in my view, the idea of having a standing committee like this is to give you the 30 minutes if you need to discuss items like, should we have a Committee of the Whole or not, or to really delve into other items with this procedural bylaw, which I think deserves extra time. And if we save these items, or if we don't have this kind of meeting, and we have to do this in a public session of council, it's going to add hours to our meetings. I mean, we could just have special committee meetings if that was the will of council also. But I think having a standing meeting each month provides us time to really dig into some kind of policy-heavy items, gives council the chance to really talk about it and discuss. But
No,
we can do
I
research.
appreciate the background. That's what I was looking for. And it's not necessarily a bad suggestion, Councillor Daniel. More discussion, I think, perhaps, and the rest of council opinions as well. So certainly open to discuss it.
And it is a big ticket item.
Oui.
I have to react to Nick. We're here today. I have better things to do. I have other things to do. I could be home working on contracts, billable hours, that kind of stuff. But I'm taking my afternoon to come here to discuss something that we could have discussed last week during the public meeting. So somewhere along the line, my time is being not abused, but wasted somewhere, okay? And your time and everybody else's time, staff's time and everything else. Do we add, let's say we take an hour to discuss this. We could have taken an hour last Monday. Instead, we're taking it today. Same hour. Maybe today we wouldn't have had a meeting if we had taken all of these things and discussed it last Monday. So we would not have a meeting today. I'd have my afternoon off to do other things. It's the same time. We're duplicating, we're just putting there. Actually, if there's a formula, by using the Committee of the Whole, we have to come back to council very often because we adopted a decision at the Committee of the Whole. We have to re-present it at council, sometimes with the full presentation with the PowerPoint and everything else. We do it once at the Committee of the Whole. Sometimes we do it at the full public meeting because somehow staff decide that that item is worthy of a second presentation. Okay, well, one of them is wasted time. So that's my argument. I don't mind waiting another couple of weeks or a month if we need to go more into details. But just, we have enough experience after 4.5 years on council to know that a lot of the items that we discuss at the Committee of the Whole are repeated or could be discussed at a public meeting. There's no more time. It's an hour here or an hour there, same thing. But this meeting today is a waste of my time because we could have added it to last meeting, lasted less than 2 hours. Add another hour, we could have chucked off this one. That's my argument.
Conseiller Bourgeois, may I ask another question? So for the sake of managing today's meeting, would you feel comfortable if we asked staff to come back to us with a little bit more detail? I don't know how the other colleagues feel, but maybe we could have a bit more information and then could go
Like I
to
said
a vote
earlier,
on
I don't know how council wants to discuss this.
Okay.
I can make a motion, and then we notice of motion, same procedure through the hoops, staff come back. I have no problem with that. We'll have a better discussion next time. I'll go through my list, and there might be
Just-
other things that we add.
Juste avant, je veux dire à conseillère Edgett, we're on the first item, procedural, and we're discussing the committee of the whole. Donc, merci. Conseiller Bourgeois.
Okay, merci beaucoup. I think it would be wise if somewhere, somehow, someone on staff conduct a small survey amongst councilors to know if the new system to participate virtually is better than the old one. Because I don't think it is. I think that system was brought in because staff had certain needs, and that's fine. It does not facilitate my work if I want to participate virtually. It's just a request, but it is on the agenda. And I couldn't find it in the procedural bylaw, but I remember sometimes in our first mandate from 2008, 2012, councilors decided to meet by our own selves to discuss some of these issues. And we were told at the time that we couldn't do that. It was illegal to do that. We need to have the city clerk present whenever council discusses something. So we stopped meeting informally. However, last year, we started meeting informally. Maybe the clerk was there, but it wasn't a formal meeting to draw up our strategic plan. Right? It could have been a special committee of the whole meeting, but we didn't. So I think we need to consider either having the opportunity for councilors to, pardon the expression, shoot the shit. Every once in a while, somebody can bring up something and we discuss it without having a formal agenda. Let's discuss this, or let's discuss that. Is there any opportunity for, not in the procedural bylaw? We are forbidden, and correct me if I'm wrong, Shelley, but we are forbidden to meet without a formal une convocation officielle, formelle, not to make decisions, but just to discuss sometimes informally. And the best example is strategic plan. Do we need to bring it to a committee of the whole? Or can we have that sort of informal meeting on the sixth floor? That worked very well. But somehow that, I'm not sure, is legal according to what we were told before. Maybe the rules have changed with the Local Governance Act. I'm not aware of it. But I was told that we can't meet as a council. I can go have a coffee with Councillor Lejeune and discuss anything I want. But in terms of all the councillors discussing something important like a strategic plan, are we bound by the procedural bylaw or not? And if so, or the Municipalities Act or other.
Go ahead, Nick.
So that's a bit of a complicated question, and it's one that we've raised with Department of Local Government. Other provinces make specific reference in their legislation to allowing for that type of, strategic planning session, orientation sessions, that kind of thing. Our legislation does not have that. We've spoken to the province, and they've said, well, of course you can do that. Said, okay, wonderful, put it in the legislation. It's not in the legislation yet. But we have tried to structure those working sessions. I think the key that we try to avoid in those sessions is council making any kind of decisions on anything, right? We're not conducting city business. They're working sessions. They're chances, like you said, to collaborate with staff, get ideas on the table, and then we can come back to council with something more formal that, we understand where council wants us to go.
Does the legislation prohibit us from having strategic planning sessions more
Well,
informal?
that's a question I'd have to kind of do a little more research.
Item number 2 on your thinking, come back to council, see if,
3,
if we
the
can.
surveys too. Yep.
Pardon?
The surveys too, that's number 3.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Conseiller Bourgeois, may I just suggest something, and it's just a suggestion. So if Nick, if we can do that, maybe prior to the strategic meeting, we could all get together informally, and we could even discuss the strategic plan. Is that,
I don't know how do you do it, but
Okay.
there's a new council coming up in 6
Right.
months or 7 months. They don't need to be handcuffed. Let's have just a free-for-all, and first question is, you went door to door, elected councillors, congratulate, what did the people tell you? Does that require a committee of the whole, public meeting, or a strategic planning meeting that's not covered by this? Should it not be? If the legislation does not prohibit us, can't council say, at the request of 3 councillors, council will hold an informal discussion on a specific item? That kind of stuff. I'll leave it up to staff to come back to us with solutions. But unless council doesn't want to have strategic planning sessions, to me, that'd be kind of silly, but, council is supreme, so if it doesn't want to have informal meetings, we'll just throw that one baby out with the bathwater. Je continue?
oui, oui, allez-y.
Honnêtement, là, tu...
2 autres questions, OK?
Parfait, puis là, tu continueras. And I probably printed the wrong version because I did not know 27, as Councillor Steves mentioned, is not 9, so it's probably the old one. But in section 23 of the old one, when a committee has the meeting of a committee is open to the public, how does the public know? Do we advertise? Should there be a measure here that it has to be communicated? Like Social Inclusion Committee, I've never seen any notice that our meetings are public and we invite the public to them, so.
We are currently working on a website that will have all the ABCCs on it. We're just finalizing everything, all meetings, minutes that are able, agendas will be posted. Committee of the Whole, and actually all 3 of council meetings, including in cameras, private sessions, the dates are published and agendas are put on there except for private sessions.
Perfect. We have a bylaw, we can't enforce it, or, we have public meetings, but we don't tell the public that there's a meeting, so good, looking forward to that. There's a section, on section 25, and I'll stop there, my 4th question. It says that when a vote is called, members attending the meeting by means of electronic communication, I think, is Councillor Richard here on virtually, or any other councillor?
Neither one of them are online as of yet.
Okay, so I've participated often, but when they attend a meeting by means of electronic, shall be asked to state their vote only after all other members present at the meeting have cast their votes. That's not what we've been doing. We asked me to vote at the same time, not after. So why would we require that once, if I'm virtually, I'm having to wait for the other members, and then I see basically whether my vote's going to make a difference or not? That's.
I believe that has been changed in the new bylaw.
Oh.
That says that because we're now electronic, you vote at the same time. I believe.
Okay,
Don't quote me.
sorry.
Nick can confirm.
Yeah, we are suggesting changes to that section.
I missed it. Like I said, I have the wrong one, or the previous one. Perfect. Thank you. I'll stop there.
It's good. So does anyone else wish to ask questions on this? Donc, sinon, je vais retourner à conseiller Bourgeois. Donc, conseiller Léger? OK, c'est beau.
Merci, Madame la Ministre. Thanks. I think I'm just trying to understand, or trying to maybe figure out a way that we could prolong this in a. We can do it this afternoon. I have to agree, though, that the Committee of the Whole, like we're meeting today, there's nobody here. And there is that real disconnect with respect to a lot of people who do watch Rogers, for example, and because they pick up on that meeting. So anyway, I welcome the other questions and suggestions. I think I'm just sort of wondering, probably this is like a 4-hour real good discussion that we need to have. So I think what's important is, first of all, to have the questions out and then figure out, is that this afternoon or what do we do? So just my thoughts.
Si, conseiller Léger, vous avez combien de questions encore, conseiller Bourgeois, là?
Probablement 6 ou 7.
OK, c'est beau. Allez-y.
Okay. Section 26. I just want to know how council members can add items to an agenda. Because if we have to wait for the meeting, we need unanimous consent, right? So the way the process works, and I've never been mayor or deputy mayor, so I've never attended, but there's a meeting the week prior to, and then you decide, whoever is there around the table, what we're going to be discussing next week, right? Okay, so can I just simply send out, hey, I'd like to discuss this in a couple of weeks or so? Is that, because it doesn't say, it's basically the agenda is determined by the city clerk or designate. So I know it's not Shelley who decides Monday morning what we're going to discuss next week. There's a committee, there's a meeting. So is it as simple as adding something like any councillor who wants an item can submit prior to the committee selection agenda?
The agenda review.
Agenda review.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You get the word.
We have a running agenda in our office that anybody who gives us when they'd like to present, we add it to that so that it keeps
It's not
track.
on the procedural bylaw. So officially, I don't know
Yeah,
that I have that right.
yeah.
Because right now, I can send it to you. There's no obligation that you would put it. So there's no measure there that I can refer to, say, why didn't you add my agenda?
We can add a wording to that.
At least if I have the permission to send it and you have the obligation to consider it during your meeting, I'll be happy. You don't have to add it, but at least you have to consider it.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Moving right along. This one is tough, but Section 37, registered presentations, 5 minutes. And the whole, if you don't register, 2 minutes. And there's somewhere else where, you can address again, especially during public hearings, you can do a second time. And we've tried to make sure that people who come to the mic don't repeat. You've tried it and you've done a superb job at this, but people still come up and they still repeat. So I'm not sure there's a solution to that, but I think we should, I don't know, because everybody has the right to speak. It's a democratic forum, but in section 43B, a motion to refer the matter to administration for review and recommendation at a subsequent time. And that piqued my curiosity. We've discussed it among some of the councillors. Do we actually need recommendations from staff? If so, why? Why can't staff come to council and say, here are the 3 options. This is the analysis. And now, the best CRFs we receive, in my opinion, come from planning. They go through the whole plan and what's pertinent, what's not pertinent. It's 5-6 pages, but all the information is there. And they have still a recommendation, that's fine. But do we need a recommendation? Can we instead have option A, cost benefit analysis, option B, cost benefit analysis, option C, cost benefit analysis? We're sort of smart people as well. I think we can read those 3 options and pick one that we agree with. It may not be agreeable by the entire council. That's where we would have a debate and a discussion. The problem is, once we have that recommendation, what does the mayor have to do according to procedural bylaw? We can't discuss an item until there's a motion. And the motion is usually the recommendation. You just asked the first, does anybody want to move the recommendation? So, and once we have that recommendation, another procedural bylaw, I think it's 58 and 68, says you can't discuss another motion. So we can't discuss option B or option C. We have to decide first on option A unless it's removed, right? So that, nobody does that. You go home, you want to buy a car, you sit down with your spouse and you go, okay, what can we afford? You don't say, okay, let's start off with the motion, what kind of car do we want to buy? You say, let's explore, let's go get the information, and then a house, car, whatever. You have a discussion first, get the facts first, and then you have a motion. We work differently for whatever reason. I've never seen this in volunteer organizations. I've seen this at council, that we need to have a motion first, and then we discuss. So I'm not sure we need a recommendation, because it could be made in a conclusion. Staff recommend option B. But in the decision, it should be up to something like council should adopt one of the three options. And then we leave council to debate with our consideration, 1 foot considering what our citizens, and 1 foot considering what we think is the best.
C'est une excellente question. So what do other cities do? I mean, is this something that we all do the same?
I'd have to do a little more research on that. I haven't looked at other cities' CRFs in detail. We follow Robert's rules, I know that, and Robert's rules, I believe, I don't have it with me, but I believe it's part of Robert's rules that the Assembly needs to have a motion in front of them before they engage in debate or discussion. I can confirm that. I see your point. Having the administrative recommendation there and having the chair ask that particular question, does anybody want to move the recommendation, takes that decision away from council in some people's eyes, although we have had situations where somebody has said, well, I don't want to move that, but I'm going to move this, right? So that's a possibility, and maybe the answer is it's a more open-ended question by the chair to say, does anybody have a motion they would like to move? So the CRF still has an administrative recommendation, if that's what council wants, so you have our best professional advice as to what administration wants. There are alternatives there. The question is more open. A councillor can move whatever they want. It could be one of the listed alternatives. It could be something completely different that we haven't thought of. So that's a possibility. I don't think the bylaw needs to change for that.
And even if Robert's rule is there, council is supreme, we can say we do not want recommendations. I don't mind, I repeat, that staff put a recommendation in their conclusion. But when the title of recommendations come in, and there it is, we're sort of, the reflex of the mayor is say, anybody want to move the recommendations, which is exactly what she did there. So we're sort of painted into a corner before we can start our discussions. Maybe there's information that's missing. And to me, the solution, as most people work in their decision-making outside of city council, is common sense. Get all the information first. So first round of discussion, the mayor would say, is there any information missing here or information that you think is wrong? So let's have the discussion or the specific, no discussion on opinions, just facts. Are there facts that are missing here? Next round, what do you think? And you could go around the table with all councillors saying, well, I think this and I think that, and opinion. Okay, now we've had that discussion on facts and opinions. Does somebody want to make a motion? That's what most people do in most organizations. But in this organization, Robert's rules notwithstanding, doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense because it doesn't lead to the best decisions. The best example I have, in an extreme case, is the menorah, where we, in a private meeting, and I won't go into details because it's private, but once we had the first motion, which was the recommendation, it prevented us from adopting what we adopted eventually, a couple of weeks later, which I think is the better decision. How come we couldn't do that? Well, we couldn't debate that motion because we were still discussing the first one. So we had to, and then there was a vote taken, and we went that way, and all hell broke loose. So just one example of how doing this way, Robert's rules, is counterproductive to making the best decision. So if you want to go back and consider how we do it, but I don't want council to be bound by a recommendation from the get-go, and that we cannot discuss the issue without a motion. That does not make sense. Let's have a discussion on the facts first, a discussion on the opinions first, and then look for a motion. We did that on an issue of maybe 6 months ago when you came in first, and it worked marvelously well. May not work every time, but it's more common sense than not.
Merci, Councillor Bourgeois. I tend to agree with you on that. So, Nick, could you find out how other municipalities are working through these motions and?
I can, but it might be nice to hear what other elected officials have
Oh,
to say about
I
that
would
also.
love to
don't-
hear
I don't
as
know.
well. Merci. So, does anyone else wish to speak? Conseiller Butler?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you know, I agree with a lot what Councillor Bourgeois is saying about recommendations and things, but, you know, I do rely on staff and their expertise on a lot of things. You know, with finance, you know, I would have loved to have had my pool built 5 years ago, but because of the recommendations from Jock and them, that, you know, the money's just not there. You know, so I find when they come, you know, and we could maneuver a little bit regards to the recommendation, but, you know, when you look at it, there's a recommendation, you're right, but we can vote it down, that first recommendation, and there's usually one or two different recommendations farther down, you know, we can reconsider. The issue that I have with not having committee of the whole meetings, and I think Councillor Bourgeois said it from at the very beginning, is they used to, when we talk about committees and the amount of people that are selected to sit on committees from outside, they're not elected officials. The reason why I like it, the committee of the whole, is when it comes here, it's the elected officials that make these final decisions. It's not a group of non-elected officials, people sitting on committees that come forward, and then that councillor brings forward a recommendation. This is, to me, this is democracy. The people in Ward 3 has elected Dave and I to bring their concerns forward. Something that might come forward in a committee of the whole might affect our ward, but I'm not sitting on that. I'm not sitting on that board or on that committee with residents from the city that's been elected. And so to me here, if I kind of take this between, when I think of a committee of the whole myself, I could be wrong, but this is mine, that here is the public, here's the private, we're kind of in between. So, and I kind of like that, you know, we can still batter around here and kind of get our point. There's some really good points that you did bring forward, you know, with the recommendations. Also, I've never used the online, but I've seen where people have been online and hasn't done very well trying to talk or get notified that they can speak. So I think that is something that survey, but but I've never been on council where we didn't have the committee of the whole, and I find I really like it. I really like the committee of the whole, and I don't want a whole pile of committees. I find the more committees we have, the more issues we have. The more issues we have is certain people have to be on every committee in the city. You know, just certain names pop up. And after a while, are we really getting that everybody in the city speaking? No. So, you know, and it takes time from residents too. And again, you know, we'll go back to when we 2012 or 2016 when I came on and we got the raise in pay. You know, one of the reasons is that you're putting more hours in. we're putting more hours in. And honestly, we do. I don't know about the rest, but, I know Councillor Bourgeois puts in lots of hours too, but this is, to me, this is just a part of my obligation to not just to Ward 3, but to the city. So I'll leave it there. But I mean, listen, I'll go along with council, whichever way they want to, it's no, I agree with we could do a little bit better with the rubs and rules of order regards and recommendations and things like that. But I still like to have staff here so I can lean on their expertise or I can call them on it. And I wouldn't want them to feel awkward if I called them on something and they weren't part of a committee, put them on the spot. So anyway, that's my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Conseiller Butler. Donc, est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions? Any other question from someone who hasn't spoken yet? Non? Conseiller... Monsieur Gérard? Excuse-moi.
J'ai une question moi aussi. J'ai une question moi aussi, and it's for Nick, and I think going back to one of the comments that Councillor Bourgeois made, or one of the questions that he had, when it comes to the CRF and how we represent the recommendation from administration, if we modified that, that really wouldn't have much of an impact on the procedural bylaw. So we could address some of the concerns that Conseiller Bourgeois had by modifying our CRF, and that's something we could probably explore and see if that would work, still ensuring that council has recommendation from administration, but perhaps not, how should I say, positioned, if you want to, as a motion, and allow a bit more of an open-ended consideration by council.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I was just thinking there might be some exceptions to that, like tenders, for example, planning matters. We may not have the same flexibility for legal reasons. But for the most part, we can make it a more flexible recommendation.
Without affecting the procedural bylaw.
Exactly.
So that's just an operational
Exactly.
approach on how we present pieces, so therefore not requiring an additional consideration there. Okay.
Merci. Conseiller Butler.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I've just a couple things. First of all, I'm glad it wasn't tacked on, this wasn't tacked on to the last meeting. I didn't get no pizza last time. Just a little joke, but anyway, Daniel's got some really good points, and I don't want to look and see that I'm not interested. Maybe we could postpone this, and Daniel is really good at this. And I hate to give him too much credit because it does sometimes go to his head, but I'll say that maybe the questions that he has that he could forward to you, and then we could get something back. Because this doesn't have to be passed today. I mean, this is, no. So would everybody agree with that maybe we could postpone this and Daniel could send, and if any other councillors also have any questions, that they could just pass them on to Nick and Franz, and where we have any issues? Would be?
Thank you, Councillor Butler. So is this the wish of council? Do you wish to go with the recommendation from Councillor Butler? I'm fine with that, so. Conseiller Bourgeois, vous avez un grand sourire, donc.
I already sent them.
Ah oui, c'est vrai, oui.
So I don't mind postponing it again, but we had this discussion, and I sent staff my concerns, so we can postpone it again. I don't mind. You want me to resend you?
Well, I don't remember getting them myself.
I send it to staff.
Oh, but I think that, to be fair, that council should have known what you were sending.
Yeah. Didn't I send it to council as well?
I don't remember seeing them.
Okay. The document's already been sent, so we can.
Well, maybe somebody could send it to us, and I could have, and just hit delete when I seen
Yeah.
it.
I have no problem postponing and resending it and everything else, but I just want to wrap up on
Sure,
this
yep.
point. As I said earlier, it's not the recommendation per se that bothers me. It's the fact that procedurally, Section 58 says, a motion must be made and seconded by a member before council can debate an item. So usually the way it goes, clerk, what's the next item? This. all right, we have a presentation from staff. They make a presentation, and then the mayor says, all right, to debate it, I need a motion. Well, we're stuck with the recommendation unless, as Nick said sometimes, and you've done it and I've done it, I'll move option B instead. But if we don't press the button first, whoever presses the button first gets to put that motion out, and then we're bound, handcuffed to discuss that motion and not the other ones type of thing, right? So is there a way, I don't mind staff presenting their recommendation. I think it'd be preferable for me anyways, in a conclusion somewhere. Staff recommend this option for these reasons. That's fine, I appreciate that. But when it comes to the decision, we are forced to make a motion before we can discuss. And that doesn't make sense to me. So is there a way procedurally that we can, like I said, first round of questions, is there missing information or incorrect information? Nobody else says anything? Okay, second round, would you mind stating your concerns, your opinions, why you think that? All right, everybody's got a chance to kick at the can. Now I need a motion. So we've got usually 2 or 3 options, and then depending on, remember the menorah thing, where we had 3 options and the motion was made, and then afterwards we were bound by that one. Well, after a first discussion, we probably would have made the right call the first time. That's my conviction, that we would have made the right call the first time instead of making the wrong motion. It was adopted, we came back on it. Okay, so that's just the one item, one example, maybe the rare exception, but it did happen, and it blew up in our face because we didn't go through the information and the opinions before we made the motion. So if there's a way to bypass Section 58 or eliminate Section 58 and transform it into series of questions on facts, series of opinions, and then motion, we don't have to have a motion before we can discuss it, that would please me. So if staff can come up with a better solution than the 58 and 59, and what else? There's another one where we can't discuss another motion at the same time, just to make more sense out of how regular folks make a decision rather than bound by these hindrances. So I'll finish at that, and we
Merci.
can delay the discussion to the next meeting, and I'll send you whatever I sent to staff.
How do we move forward with this, though? We have a counselor who's an expert in this field, and we have our legal experts. And so could you work together and bring something to us? Nick, is that, because we're going to, rehash this over and over again.
We can do similar to what we did with the ABCC's policy. We had a list of questions from Councillor Bourgeois. We can respond to each of those questions. I do have the document that you sent me. I don't think it has all of your points in it, but it has a large amount of them. We can, if you have more to add, feel free to send them to us. We can provide a document with responses to each, send that back to council. We can come back here for the debate.
Okay, so that's something that we could do. C'est beau. Merci. Conseiller Léger.
Merci. So just for clarification then, if we were to adopt that type of approach, which I quite frankly feel it's the best way to have a discussion and not understanding that we have a recommendation from staff who have analyzed it, but then there are other options. So if we were going to do that, then does that mean that item 57 in the 2025 version then, which is a motion must be made and seconded by a member before council can debate an item, can that be removed from our procedural bylaw? Or modified? Definitely needs to be modified.
Yes, I think it can. I'd like to do a little more research and bring it
Okay.
back to council first, right? I mean, I know Councillor Bourgeois made the analogy about how you go about, buying a car or deciding what to have for supper around your kitchen table. I think this kind of forum is a little bit different, and I think that the Roberts rules they're very detailed and they're very hard to understand, but I think they're in place to make sure that we are, doing efficient decision-making. We're debating one thing at a time. I mean, I think we've all been in meetings where the conversation has been very confusing when there are lots of ideas pinging off, one way
But
and the other. So it helps us to keep things organized.
Right.
But, so I'd
There-
like to provide a little more detail.
There need to be recommendations, I get that, and there needs to be an analysis. But I'll use another example, which is when we were presented the budget, you presented the recommendation then we should have a discussion on how things are. Instead of the recommendation is we're going to hold the tax rate and so on and so on. And I've argued that, saying, well, then I don't need to be here. The decision's already been recommended. Oh, no, you can modify that. I think that is what we're trying to say is that's a recommendation. There's two other possibilities, and you had them in your presentation. And then let council have a frank discussion and figure out what it is that we're comfortable with. That's all. So anyway, I think somehow that has to go back, and I thank Councillor Bourgeois. We've talked a lot about what can change, and these are really important things, because that's what I do find. I find that, why would I need to show up? The decision's already been made, and by the way, it's in the newspaper saying that this, or whatever social media platform people are using, it's already there. So, anyway, I think if we could, that would be great.
Merci, Conseiller Légère. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this? Sinon, Conseiller Bourgeois, est-ce que vous avez d'autres questions? Non? C'est terminé? Oui? OK. Oui, non, c'est très bien. Oui, c'est parfait. Merci beaucoup. So,
You had a mover for a postponement,
j'ai pas compris. Là.
a postponement of the motion.
So we're going to postpone. the
Councillor Butler, did you
Is that
want to
what
motion to postpone? Okay, you will require a seconder.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder to postpone. You,
Moved
Councillor
by-
Butler, you're moving that? Yes. To postpone, and I need a seconder. Councillor Steves. C'est beau. Merci.
Can we bring
So-
up the vote? We can do an electronic vote.
Electronic votes?
Unless
So
there's questions.
Are there questions on this?
Oh, no,
If not, we will go to an electronic vote.
it's up on your screen.
To
To
postpone.
yes. Okay, we can close the vote. Both Councillor Richard and Councillor Crossman are not online.
Motion carried unanimously. Merci. Madame la greffière.
The next is agency boards and commissions and committees. It was postponed at the August 25th, 2025 meeting, and Nick is here and myself. Council will note that Councillor Bourgeois had sent us some questions, and we've answered it, and we put it in a document if there are any questions.
So we do have a motion on this. So, again, it comes back to this motion thing. So, do I have a mover and a seconder for the motion that's on the table? Donc, est-ce que can somebody move the motion? You will move it, conseiller. And Conseiller Bourgeois, do you wish to second? No? Conseiller Leblanc? Oui, c'est beau. Thank you, merci.
Conseiller
Sur les
Bourgeois.
questions,
Conseiller Bourgeois.
Conseiller Bourgeois, and then Councillor Butler.
J'ai pas de problème à laisser mon tour, je reviendrai plus tard, mais je veux adresser les réponses à mes questions.
OK, c'est beau. Donc, Conseiller Butler, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Bourgeois, for giving me a moment. My issue with this is, and I couldn't seem to find it, the answer, is that I still don't agree. I find that what's happening especially with our boards and committees is that we went through this a couple years ago with planning, and we selected people, and then we ended up, became a mess in the media. And we just went through it again. It never came out yet, but it'll be coming with the bilingual policy. As a counselor, as an elected official, I do not agree with the deputy mayor or the mayor, whoever's in charge, and the CAO and one other person selecting who's going to be on the committee, calling them people, letting them know that they've been selected, and then it comes back to us to rubber stamp it. I do not agree with that. I agree that I'm an elected official, and when you have several names, they should come back, send to us, find out if we have any problems, and if we do have problems with that individual or individuals, this should be taken very seriously, like it wasn't the last time. Council made to be look like fools. People were changing their mind after they sent letters and emails. We, as elected officials, should have the last say who gets on committees. We're the ones that have to go to the public to advise them why decisions were made by that committee. And I do not believe that this is being covered yet, and I'll be voting against it unless this is resolved. Because I am done rubber stamping, because that's what comes back. We will make nominations, and they've already been called and told that they have it. That's not the way it should be done. It should be done that you sit down and listen, we've got 4, we got 5, but we only need 3. Here's the ones. And when we come back and we say, well, we have problems with this person or that person, or we don't think that when you read, why are they selected? They're selected because they're supposed to have expertise in that field. Well, you know, some of them, how do you become, how do we know they have expertise in that field? You guys are sitting down in a room and selecting 3 people. And I go back to, usually seems like the same names on every committee or related to. So I'm going to have an issue with this. So unless somebody can figure this out, maybe Nick, go ahead.
So Shelley may have more to add here. She's a bit more familiar with committee nomination, the application, the nomination process. I mean, a lot of thought does go into the criteria for selecting committee members, and typically we have a group of people who will vet those applications, making sure that we're getting a good cross-section of people who are selected to the committees. So that's quite an intensive process, takes a lot of time. I do hear your concern about the timing of when nominees are notified that they're being nominated versus when council is notified that they're being nominated. So I think we could probably tweak that process. If council is notified first and you have more time to voice any concerns you may have with those individuals, it gives the mayor or the deputy mayor more time to review, have a second thought, reach out to you if you have any concerns, hear more about them. The way the policy is set up, and I don't disagree with that, is that still it would be the mayor's final say who she would like or he would like to nominate, and then it's council's final say to actually vote and approve on those people. But I think we could probably tweak this so that council has more of an opportunity to provide their input to the mayor or deputy mayor before those nominees are notified that their names are being put forward publicly.
So one of the things that I disagree with is that the mayor has the final say. If the mayor has the final say, then why are they bringing it back to us to vote? You know,
Well,
the thing that bothers me the most is that, so let's say, and I'm just not disagreeing that we haven't had great boards in the past, but what I see is sometimes people could be calling up and saying, listen, or being called, say, hey, listen, you should put your name in. I would like to see, like, when some of these people have even put their application in, that they want to be on a committee. Like, we get this, somebody will call me up and say, well, I didn't even know that this committee was going on. Well, I realize that they're on our website most times, that there's openings. But at the same time, I as a counselor, would like to see when they did apply. Did they apply just the day before? Like, and I don't want to question anybody's integrity, but, you know, sometimes the one that really bothers me is that planning one, and it still bothers me today. You know, people were called out in public that should never been called out in public. That's the problem. People's names are being named in public where they should have never, ever even known that their name was on a list. And to me, that's absolutely terrible for us as counselors to have to do that. It's absolutely terrible. And you know, when people, when the mayor might have the last say, but before anybody has the last say, it should be coming to us with what we did. And you know, to be fair, we did last time with the planning, but it was still went ahead. And we had to come out in public and start talking about people that are residents, that are good people. They had their heart in the right place. But some of us didn't think that they were good for that committee, but then it blows all up. So again, there's nothing in here that says that it has to come back to council first. I'd like to see two things. Myself personally is when they apply. So everybody has to fill out a form, put their stuff in. So there should be a date. So they a date the date that they applied, they get on that committee. Number two is after, if it's the mayor and the deputy mayor and one other person sits down and let us know how many people have their names in, 6 or 7, what's their names, and if we have any problems, it goes back to the mayor. It doesn't go to public, it goes to the mayor. And then we find out then, okay, maybe this person can be removed, another person can be put on. You know, we have to do this with thinking of how we're treating our public, our citizens that are applying for this. You know, it's not, hey, listen, I'm a friend, or, you know, or anything like that. This is really, when Councillor Bourgeois was talking earlier about, you know, going back to, instead of having a committee of the whole, go back to having a whole pile of committees with residents on it. This what turns out, again, if we don't have some say in it. So all I'm saying is, I am done rubber stamping. If it comes back, I'm going to go nay on everything that comes forward unless I have a little bit more direction of why these people are being selected and they're not called before it comes to me. Thank you, Your Worship.
Merci, Conseiller Butler. I tend to agree with a lot of what you said. It was pretty embarrassing, and I was next to you, and I heard the things that were said about you, and that should not be happening. And I think we need to find a way. I don't know if the mayor, whomever is the mayor, brings this to a committee of council, and then you vote on this. I don't know, but you'd still have to vote, I think. Would you not? Nick, would we not?
Yes, and I'm not sure how that would fall, how that would meet, you know, it would have to be done in a public session, voting in a public session.
Yes.
At the end of the day for
In
council.
a public or in a-
to appoint. Yes, in a public setting, session.
So, go ahead, Councillor Butler.
I guess, Nick, that's where I will disagree. I think that these people are residents of Moncton. They're coming on, they're working, they have to follow our code of conduct when they come on here on these committees, correct? I feel that when we're talking about bringing people on, they're not employees, I understand that. But I think that we as a council should be able to sit down and privately talk about who's going to be on committees. I really do. I mean, we have an open-minded council here. We have, you know, I just do not see why we have to bring this. No, had to bring it public at some time, but I don't see at the very beginning why we cannot talk behind closed doors about who should be on what committee. And I argue that, and again, we go back to the planning one. I mean, you know, hey, that was just way out there. I've never seen anything like it. But it could happen again. And all we had to do was everybody sent in emails. We never got nothing back. We were just kind of left in limbo. And then after the council meeting, you know, there was one woman, Deputy Mayor, standing there, so was Councillor Legere, and says, you know, you're the most pathetic person I've ever met in my life, you know, coming up and talking to a counselor like that. Not that everybody else didn't have the same agreement, maybe I am pathetic, but the point being is that we put ourselves in that position, and we have to learn. If we're going to have people elected to the committee, it's people that everybody in council agrees with. And again, I'm sure that there's got to be some way around that we can sit and talk about who should be on that, because if Paulette's there and Serge is there and one other person, I mean, why can't we all do it? If three people can sit in private and talk about who's going to be elected, why can't we all? We're all elected. So, you know, answer if you could, please.
Well, I mean, that kind of goes back to the question that Councillor Bourgeois raised earlier, and if you have a quorum of council sitting together talking about city business, all of a sudden, it might become a council meeting, right? And then we have to follow those rules, and there's only certain things that you can discuss privately. So it's something we'll have to do a little more research on to see if there's another way that we can, another option that we can provide.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame la greffière.
I do have a few clarifications. You asked about the date that they apply. We do have that, and we can provide that. They must apply online. We don't accept emails anymore. Serge, I don't believe you sit on any of these nominations. I believe it is the committee itself, like staff. So the bilingualism would have been Aloma, probably, no? Aloma, do you want to go to the mic and explain that? While she's walking there, we don't tell them that they've been selected. We ask them if they want to let their names stand. So they don't know if they've been selected or if they haven't. So that's.
Well, you know, I was kind of born in late last night when that one came up about, but listen, when I talked to Paulette about the bilingualism, just to see how it came up, she said her, Serge, and I think it was Nicole sat down that day. You could have been mistaken, but that's what you told
I'm
me.
sorry, what?
That you told me that you, Serge, and Nicole sat down to go over the list.
No, it was
Well, I get-
Aloma and Melanie
Well,
who
then.
were working on the committee.
Yeah.
No, it
So
wasn't.
anyway,
Do you want me to just give you
Yeah.
1 minute?
Please go ahead and
ahead.
Yeah,
explain the
sorry.
process that we went through.
So the way that the process happens is all of the applications come in, there's a rubric or some sort of list of criteria that are made, and whoever is going to be staff support to that committee, so in this particular case, it was Melanie and France and a member of the HR department, reviewed all the applications, kind of coded them according to what criteria they would meet, what sort of expertise they brought, and tried to put together a list of names that were the most sort of diverse and broad possible to meet all of the criteria that were needed in the list, and making sure they, you know, weren't going to get 6 people that have the exact same expertise, and then they brought that list of names back to the deputy mayor.
Yes.
So then there were no.
No, they were reached out to ask and to see if they were still willing to let their names stand.
Okay.
The challenge is, Councillor Butler, that if we don't ask them, and then sometimes there's quite a lag between when they apply, and sometimes we're taking names from even, like this one's a little bit of a different case because it's maybe 2 or 3 months since they applied, but sometimes it's quite a long time, and so if someone doesn't at least ask, the risk is that it's going to come forward to a public council meeting, you're going to appoint them to a committee, and they didn't even know that they were being
So here
considered.
could be another way. After you get to them, you could come, because it's more important for council to know than for them to know. That's the way I look at it. So in other words, what you should be doing, and maybe we can get around to that by some way, is bring it to council first, say, hey, here's the 4 people that we're looking at. Do you want to go ahead and ask if they'll stand? Because as soon as you call somebody and say, listen, everybody knows, if you call them up, it's another way of saying, hey, you're on this, if you still want it.
Yeah.
What we're trying to say is, I'm not rubber stamping that anymore. and, you know, this is not on you, don't get me.
No, and I concur, and I think the challenge is the way it's been done in the past is those names come to council, I think, maybe on the Friday before the meeting, and so it doesn't really give you enough time. So it may just be not
But
worth
now,
it.
that's not what I'm arguing about.
No,
When-
but I'm
when they
saying.
come. My argument
No, but I'm
is-
saying if the names came to you on the Monday or something before the meeting, so that you'd have a chance to have that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And if, then they wouldn't be notified before. They could still be notified before the meeting if everyone was concurred that they were going forward.
And that's what I'm trying to say. No phone calls to anybody until it comes back to council. We, as elected officials, will have the final say if you're going to contact them, see if they stand. Yep.
I guess that's a fundamental difference that we have, that I think you as a group need to decide on. I mean, and I don't quite know the process for it, but it sounds like you're talking about taking away the power from the chair to make nominations that
No.
she wants to do.
No, that ain't what I'm saying.
Okay?
What I'm saying is, before it gets to the chair, okay, we as council have to know, before you call anybody and say, listen, do you want your name to stand? We would like to have input.
Right.
So then it goes to the chair, and the chair can notify them that, yeah, there's no issues, we've talked. The mayor, the deputy mayor, the mayor can contact and say, listen, would you like your name to still stand? We have to have some input, because if you call them and you notify them and say you want your name to stand, then it comes to us. We get that rubber stamp, and I'm not doing it.
Totally agree. What happens in the situation where there are concerns, but the mayor says, I'm still going ahead with these nominations?
So then we will have an argument with the mayor like we did with our former mayor about the planning. But what I'm saying is that we have to change this, what we're bringing up today about agency, boards, commissions, and committees, the policy, that something has to come back to council before people are asked if they're going to keep their name standing. We have to have some input. If not, if it just goes back to the mayor, and she says yes, and we have no input, then why is it coming to us to even vote? Like, you know, it's already done. How do you tell a citizen your name's been picked? Okay, we're saying do you want your name to stand? Well, it's the same thing if you call me up and you say, listen, and I've got a couple of calls over the years when I wasn't on council from George. You know, we have to do this different. It's not working this way.
Councillor Butler, may I just add that we are working within a democracy, so it's a democratic right to vote yes or no.
Yeah.
So I think, and that's fair. I think that we should be allowed to do that. I really empathize with what you went through the last time, and I hope that this will never happen again. Really, it was, I'm still shocked by what I saw in that room. I don't think that this is going to happen often. I don't know how we got it going to that point, but somehow we did, and now we pay the price for that. So I don't know what else to say, Councillor Butler.
I just want them not to be notified until we know. That's not much to ask as elected official. I mean, it makes common sense, actually.
So maybe we're saying the same thing. I think we can tweak the process so that, let's say we have a council meeting coming up next Monday night with appointments. Today, council would receive an email from the mayor saying, these are the people who are proposed to be nominated. Here's some background on each of them. If you feel you need more info, you then have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to reach out to the mayor with any concerns you might have. She has the opportunity to speak with you each individually if you have concerns. And then come Friday, she can make her decision of who she wants to nominate.
As long as nobody's notified.
Right.
Before we have a chance to talk to the mayor. The last time,
Right.
even with the planning, they were notified that they were on the committee, and then it came back to us, even after we sent emails in.
Yep.
I don't want to rehash this, but, you know, we have to, as elected officials, we have to have some say in this. But I agree.
So, right, and so I guess all I'm saying is, yeah, and she cannot notify the
Absolutely.
nominees, or the way that we do it, ask if they still want their names
That's
to
right.
stand. That could happen Thursday or Friday. But that
It
could also.
happen after the meeting, then we vote for it.
Pardon me?
It could happen after we have the meeting and we vote for them.
Well, we try to avoid that because we don't want to be in a situation where council appoints somebody who's since moved to St. John or something, right? We need to make sure that they still want to be part of the committee. I guess I just want to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the mayor still having the authority to nominate who she wants to, even after hearing the concerns from council. We won't notify the nominees until after you've had a chance to express your concerns, but the mayor still has that right to put forward the nominees she wants to, after having heard council's concerns.
I'll let the rest of council speak on this, Nick. Honestly, my biggest thing is that they don't get notified before we get a chance to look at it. And I think that's just fair to us as sitting councilors. Anyway, thank you.
Merci, conseiller Butler. Conseiller Léger.
Merci. So I'm just trying to, I guess, maybe better understand. If these are appointments by the mayor, they're not appointments by city council.
Exactly.
Currently, the process is there are nominations by the mayor, the appointments are made by city council. The vote is made by council. Council appoints people to committees.
So if council appoints, they're council appointments. They're not mayor appointments.
Right, the mayor nominates.
No, but in our agenda, they're always appointments. They're mayor's appointments. Am I wrong? Nominations? Aren't there nominations from the mayor?
They're nominations from the mayor.
They're nominations from the mayor
Nominations
for
to
council
committees
vote.
is what the title is on the agenda. Nominations from 4 committees or 2 committees.
So could there not be a process where, well, first of all, we're obligating people to go on a website and put in their registration that they wish to be part of a committee. If I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought there was also, we would ask 1, 2, or 3 different committees. I don't think you necessarily have to, but we ask that. Couldn't there be some system where every 3 months, people are just notified to say, do you still wish to, we just do it as a normal process to know that, do you still live in the city, whatever, so that we don't have to go through a process of saying, well, I get it, where you say, well, maybe they've moved. So if we can't do that, then what I would suggest is that perhaps, is there a time frame? Maybe the application is only good for 12 months. And at the end of the 12 months, you need to apply again. Or if that's not good enough, then maybe what we do is if we're going to discuss it, then I think we should have the opportunity to discuss it, make an appointment, and for whatever reason, the person either declines, that's their right, they can decline. I mean, thank you very much. I was interested, but unfortunately at this time, I can't let my name stand. Thank you for appointing me. Okay, we'll go back and we'll choose somebody else. I don't see those things in the same light so I think that would be the better way to do it. I think what we saw in terms of public embarrassment of ourselves and how all of that rolled out was very unfortunate. And again, I would also challenge us to be more diverse and more representative of the current population that we have in Moncton as well. Whether it's having francophone, having people of different cultures, all of those things. So, but I would agree that we need to have some ability again to be comfortable if we're going to appoint. Now, if that isn't the case, then we just need to be strong enough to say if these are the names, then I vote yes or no. And but that I don't find is very helpful from trying to encourage people who will volunteer their time to be on a committee for something public to be, embarrassing. And I find that that's unfortunate, and that's not what we're about either. So leave it at that. But yes, somewhere along the line, we need a better system.
Monsieur
Maybe perhaps I
Sayel.
can, merci, maybe I can, if you don't mind, maybe I'll jump into comments made by Councillor Butler, and I think maybe what we could do is better define how we proceed between the nomination and appointment. I agree with Nick. I think that we need to provide a lot more time between when nominations are brought forward to the mayor before it's brought forward to a public meeting, and definitely, how should I say, not contacting candidates prior to them being nominated. The fact that they have put their names forward indicates to me that they do want to sit on a board, and if the once in a blue moon you appoint someone that is no longer valid, well then, okay, well, we go back to another, to candidate B. So we'll play with that, maybe we'll document it a little bit better, with a little bit better of the timelines of how we will proceed from when the mayor receives the list of potential nominees, then she can provide it to council at that point in time, with enough time to get that feedback without advising the candidates ahead of time, and then just managing it through that way, because I do agree with a lot of your comments, Councillor Butler. But again, they are the mayor's nominations, not her appointments. Council makes those appointments. Hopefully that was clarified. But the idea here is to avoid those situations at all costs.
Merci, Monsieur le Gérant. I just want to make sure I clarify something before, and it's with regards to your comments, Councillor Butler. So, we're looking at the bilingualism committee, for example. So how do we move ahead with this? I'm confused. So if we have one member of council who does not wish to have, or two members of council who send me an email and say, I disagree, what do I do? I mean, it's not the whole council, it's a democracy, and we're supposed to follow the democratic process, which is the majority rules. So how do I fix this?
So maybe, Nick, maybe you can jump in as well, but in my reading of the policy, it's your nomination. Therefore, you consider everyone's position, you take it under advisement, and then you move forward with your nomination. If you feel that the reasons are valid and decide to change your nomination, that is at your prerogative as you make the nomination. You don't appoint, you make the nomination. Or if you, after talking to all of council, and you find that out of the 10 members, there's 8 that have one point of view and 2 have another, and you want to change your nomination or maintain it, that's still your prerogative. However, knowing full well that the selection, the actual appointment is made by council. From a procedural perspective, we'll make sure that no one is contacted ahead of time to ensure that there's any expectation of one way or the other, and allow council to have that debate, discussion, and vote. Maybe, Nick, I don't know if there's anything you want to add?
Just to be clear, then the list that I could send to council may not be the list that everybody wants to see. So that's what I want to know. Okay, c'est bon. Merci.
That's fine. Yeah, I think Serge hit it on the head. I mean, I might want to have some discussions with people who are actually on the ground with working with these committees, just to see what their perspective is on not notifying nominees at all, I guess, before the appointment decision's made. But otherwise, yeah, there's nothing legal that says you'd have to do that.
Conseiller Kingston.
Merci, Madame Mattis, and great points made by everybody on the ABCCs. You can almost, I'm not saying exclude the CRPA, because they do get remuneration for attending meetings. We have Moncton appointments, we have Dieppe appointments, and we have Riverview appointees. I was always unclear when the mayor sent out, here are the nominees for this committee, here are the resumes attached, they're very impressive. And if you have any issues, let me know. And then from that point, I wasn't clear on the process. How many objections would you have to have, Mayor, before you either call the applicant and said, we have objections, duly noted, or you went ahead with the nominee despite the objections, And again, we've covered those bases today, so I was never clear on how many objections we would require before a flag was raised, or if it's only one, we'll proceed with the appointment, and as Councillor Butler pointed out, the rubber stamp process, which I also kind of agree with too. So it's never been clear if the mayor is asking us for objections on any applicant, then what exactly kicks in at that
I'm
point, and how
so
many?
happy you've asked that question because I feel like I'm between the rock and the hard place on this. So can someone, how many people do I need that objects so that I remove the candidate?
If that's the criteria.
If that's-
It's completely within your discretion. You could receive one very compelling argument, you could receive 8 arguments, you get to decide. And you would have to set your own criteria. It's going to be very much a case-by-case basis, but that's why you're seeking input, and at the end of the day, it's your decision. And council, once it comes time for the appointment, that's when the rule of majority rule kicks in, right? It's a vote.
So what we went through the last time, we could go through again. Right?
Conceivably, yes.
Merci, thank you.
Merci. Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci, Madame la Maire. I'll react to the bigger discussions we've had, and then I'll cede to whoever else. And afterwards, I'll come back to my reaction to the comments of staff to my initial questions. But preliminary comment. We do not have to appoint committees, period. We choose to appoint committees because we want, first of all, to enhance democracy, to have more people involved in decision-making, to give us a different perspective than the 11 people or 10 people around this table, in addition to staff's perspective. So that's the purpose. If we don't think that we need a committee and we want to do it at a committee of the whole, we could do that as well. We've got options, but we need a procedure that if and when we do need committees, especially council committees, these are council committees, not staff committees. CAO, you organize your own internal committees as you see fit, that's none of our business. But when we're talking about council committees, this is our bailiwick. And I want to minimize staff's input into this because I've shared it with the CAO often enough and with other councillors as well. What's political belongs to us. Council committees are political. They will make recommendations at the public forum. So staff's roles, I want to protect staff. This is only their contribution whenever we absolutely need it. That's my first point. The root problem of the nomination to the Planning Commission, I'm not pointing at you, but the root problem was that there was a member of the public who was passionate about planning matter and applied. And after a controversial decision was made, that person who went against the majority of council, and that's okay, that's democracy, was suggested by staff. And it was so apparent that that person was supporting staff's position that that's why they proposed her nomination. So it came to council. The mayor took staff's advice. Maybe the mayor was in favor of that person because the mayor was against the majority of council. So there was a political dynamic involved there, but the majority, it was obvious from the consultations that that person would not be supported. And yet the mayor insisted, and that person was voted down. It became a mess. A second nomination, the mayor insisted. So, but that's the procedure, and I don't have a better solution. But you can't expect necessarily the mayor not to be biased. But in that instance, she insisted and came back before council, and so we had to vote down some people. it became an embarrassment because it went that far. If the mayor had been more wise and listened to her council, she probably would have avoided that situation, embarrassing for all of council. Although we were accused of being biased by being against somebody who was biased in favor of staff and the mayor. So I don't feel biased as much as I think staff was and the mayor was. But I just wanted to get that out there in support of your point, your argument that I don't have a better solution, but if council, please consult us and we will give you, I gave you my opinion on some of the members of, I don't oppose the committee, I think it's a good idea. I oppose the 2 nominations and for the reasons that I gave you, and you take that, as Nick said, you take that into consideration and then you decide how you want to propose. I will vote against. If you want to sever the motion that we vote for each candidate, okay, and we'll see what the mayor, the majority says, and, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. I don't mind being criticized for my position. I have to have them, and I will stand by them. Another question that I don't have, I didn't raise there, but I do implicitly, is what happens when the committee members stop meeting? We had the experience with the Enhancing Democracy Committee. I found out by pure hazard, by accident, in the summer of, I think it was 23, that the committee hadn't met since January of 23. Well, that's 6 months. Nobody on the committee told the mayor or told council? I mean, there's nothing in this bylaw or procedure or policy that says you must inform council whenever a member of a committee, and if all the members of committee stop meeting. We were caught in complete ignorance. Why did the members, did they resign? Did they officially tell the mayor? So why did the mayor not tell us? Because then we have to name other members to the committee. So there's nothing in the policy here. What happens when a committee members no longer have a quorum? No, 1, 2, 3, 4 stop meeting, resign. I don't know what happened. I still don't know what happened. But we had a committee that sort of stopped meeting, and we didn't know about it. 6 months later, it doesn't make sense to me. So we have to have something there.
So, Conseiller Bourgeois, just before we go ahead, so Nick, do you want to reply to that?
Yes, I believe we have addressed that in the policy. It's in section, or it's
Section
your
4.
comment 10. I think it's section 11, sub 3 of the new policy, where we say that no ABCC should meet less than twice a year. We have there's other elements in the policy about reviewing mandates of the committees on an annual basis, providing agendas, minutes, all that kind of thing. So we're looking to impose more structure and more control over the committees to ensure that they are meeting regularly and following their mandates.
But in that case, they weren't.
That was before this policy.
Well, I know, but
So now we have it
I'd
written in
I'd
policy.
go further than that. You have to meet twice a year. Well, if you don't meet the second, when's the second time? Could be twice, month 11 and month 12. So they don't meet for 11 months? That, to me, doesn't make any sense. But I'm told, and correct me if I'm wrong, that some of the members of the Enhancing Democracy resigned.
I don't have the details for that.
Okay, but Shelley might know more. I don't know. I just don't know what the picture is. Councillor Edgett and Councillor Steve sat on that committee. I was told that some resigned. Okay, do we need to replace them when they resign? Is there anything else in this policy that says that? Once we are informed that the majority of the committee no longer met, resigned, I don't know what happened, but they don't have a quorum anymore. Should council not be informed that one of our committees, that one, Enhancing Democracy, or any other committee, social inclusion on which I sit, shouldn't we be informed of that so that we can take appropriate actions? I don't know. There's nothing in this policy that says that.
Go ahead, Madame la Greffière.
Most of the committee members had indicated that they weren't going to be part of the committee. However, they had completed council's questions that you had submitted, and that committee was there just, they were waiting for council direction once again, hence the reason why they hadn't met. If council would have come back, once this policy was in place, we would have requested more appointments to that committee and council members as well.
And you don't think at any point council should have been made aware of that?
At that point, it wasn't in our policy to do so. So, like, we didn't even have a policy actually on ABCCs. We were kind of
Right.
Flying.
And now we have one, or we
Yes.
are about to have one, and that item is not discussed. So I don't think that 2 meetings a year is enough. Like, if they stop meeting, I think this should be coming back to council. And I don't want to pick on that one, but that proves the example, right? It may be the exception to the rule. They just stopped meeting or waited. We weren't aware of that.
if they didn't have anything to meet for,
They
like,
have a committee. They are there to enhance, what have they done to enhance the voter turnout next May?
that was put on to administration.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So if they then decided, and they were informed that council had told administration to take over the baton and make the next lap around, and they said, okay, well, in that case, we're not going to meet again, shouldn't council be informed that they have decided not to meet? Because we could have
sounds
found them
like that.
something else to do, or disbanded the committee or something anyways.
So trying to look forward with this new policy, we're trying, like I said, we're trying to add some structure to the committee mandates, more reporting from committees. I think we need to maintain a bit of flexibility also. I don't know that we should mandate within this policy how often all of our committees should meet or what time of year they should all meet. I think we have kind of templates for terms of reference for all of our committees that they'll have to complete. So I think, we need to maintain a bit of flexibility for them. I think if they're not meeting their mandate, if they're not meeting their terms of reference, if they're not meeting when they should, then I think, yes, we would probably, I shouldn't say probably, we would bring that back to council to inform them. And if there need to be changes made on certain committees, then we would do so. Right? It's hard to look back and look at the mistakes in the past because we didn't have this policy. We have it now. I think we have certain guidelines that we have to follow here. And
Okay.
and we'll do that.
So you're guaranteeing me that we're not going to have a repetition of what happened with the enhancing democracy?
I don't know that I can make any guarantees, but I can tell you that we have a policy now and we're going to follow it to the best of our ability.
So shouldn't the policy be a bit more specific and say if a committee does not meet every 3 months, I don't know what would be logical, they should inform council?
Well, I mean, that's council's decision. Right now, we have minimum twice a year. If we think that every one of our committees who are subject to this policy should meet quarterly, then we can put that in. I'm not sure what impact that has on all of the committees, if they all necessarily need to meet that often, but if that's what council wants, we can put that in.
Can you take back that? Or do you want me to make an amendment that they meet at least quarterly?
I mean, I can take that back. We can review how often all of our committees meet now, and we can provide that information to council.
Okay, good, because I would want something in the policy to prevent what happened with the Enhancing Democracy Committee. Okay? So I'll wait until my next turn to address the answers from my previous questions. Merci, Madame la Maire.
Merci. How many more questions do you have, Conseiller Bourgeois? Just an idea? Oh, 10. Okay, c'est bon. Does anyone else have any questions? No? Oh, Conseiller Redjet, no? No. C'est bon. Conseiller Bourgeois, go ahead.
Merci, Madame la Maire. I'll react. I think most of them excellent. Thank you very much. Agree with them. I'll go with the ones that I don't agree with. The first one is that we should have regular citizens or people who are not. I'm looking at when considering the appointments of residents and individuals, it is crucial to, and the only one that opens the door, that you said the policy is flexible enough, is the first one, reflect the diversity of the community. Because every single one after that is basically representing interested and affected parties, and I have no problem with that. Bringing specific skills and expertise, and I agree with that as well. Represent specific groups of service users, above the same thing, people with vested interests. What I want are people who don't have vested interests, and all you have to cover that, where you say the policy is flexible, is A, quote, reflect the diversity of the community. My interpretation of diversity of the community is to have, 50% women, a third francophones, 10% visible minorities, whatever that case may be. But diversity does not refer to average people. And I'll give an example. On the Social Inclusion Committee, there's a guy named Yves Béliveau. He does not have any specific vested interests on social inclusion issues. But he brings to the table a different perspective. Why do we do it this way? Why don't we, do this? And some of his ideas I agree with, some of them I don't. But at least he brings to the table something different. That's what I want us to include. Nobody that has vested interests or everything else. I don't agree that policy is flexible enough. I just don't. I think we need to have something that says, I don't know how you call it, people without vested interests.
Okay, so I think that's your first comment, and then we do mention the specific sections of the policy that address this. So looking at 4B, says represent interested and affected parties. What if we said if represent interested or affected parties?
I want some people who have no.
Well, you asked for F, interested citizens. So I'm just saying B could be to represent interested or affected parties. Could we do that?
Maybe I'm not clear. I want people who are not interested and affected parties. You know what I mean? Like somebody who say, well, I don't know, I'd like to serve on a committee, I just don't have any specific expertise, but I'm interested in contributing to my community. But here, represent interested and affected parties, whatever way you want to modify it. I don't know how to say it, but F would be people who have no interests, specific interests or skills and expertise. Average Joes and Yvettes. I'll just put it out there. I don't know what the rest of council wants to do, but that's one. Number two, the second point.
Well, sorry, should we
Oh.
address that question? I don't know.
Okay.
Like, I mean, we can make that change if that's what council wants. We can add interested citizens as number F.
I'll move an amendment that we add F, people without specific skills and vested interests. And if nobody seconds it, it falls. I have no problem with that, but I think if we want the best advice possible from our committees, we do have that expertise. I agree with A, B, C, D, E, but I would add a F, that we also appoint a person without vested interests and specific skills.
So are you making a motion on
I
that?
am making the
Okay.
amendment. If nobody seconds it, I move on to the next one.
So is there a seconder for the motion? There are no seconders, so we'll move to the next point.
Any other interested citizen?
Yeah,
Sure. Any other interested citizen?
just people who wish to contribute to.
Okay, so expertise in the field, and we'll run this by council again. Please reword.
Interested citizens wishing to contribute.
J'ai pas compris.
Perhaps broaden it to interested citizens wishing to contribute to Moncton. And so that it could be anyone, regardless of their expertise and what they bring. They're engaged, they wish to contribute.
So you're seconding that?
Some wording like that,
I'll
yeah.
second the
that would be
amendment.
good.
Okay,
Yeah.
c'est beau. So we do have a motion. So can we go to a vote on this motion? It's a show of hand?
Nick, can we go to a vote for this, or should we wait until,
Why don't we vote on it?
okay?
So
Okay.
what is the wish of council? Do you wish to support that motion?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so does everybody know what the change is? No, okay. We're adding F, and it would state people without specific, without specific interest, or no? Interested citizens who wish to contribute to Moncton.
So the starting sentence is, number 4, when considering the appointment of residents and individuals to serve on these various ABCCs, it is crucial to, and then we have a list of A, B, C, D, E, and then we would add F, and I think it would be, consider interested citizens wishing to contribute. Does that make sense?
So we'll, Councillor Butler, did you wish to speak?
Yeah, I just, I understand what Councillor Bourgeois and Councillor Gier are trying to get to, but how does anybody select that type of person? Like, if you go on and you fill out a form on the web, how do you judge them if they're going to be A or B, C, D, or, oh, we got an F? You know, like, I just don't understand, like, how do we come to that conclusion that is, like you said, an ordinary Joe or an ordinary whoever? You know, if they want to become and help with the citizens, or be a citizen to help Moncton, I mean, by just applying, you get that. I mean, I just don't get, I don't get that, so.
Councillor Bourgeois, go
If I
ahead.
may, I gave the example of the Social Inclusion Committee, maybe you weren't here. There's a guy called Yves Béliveau, and he approached me after the election, I think he ran at large, and he said, I'd like to contribute, but I don't have any specific expertise. I think he's in management or something, but he doesn't have any expertise that matches the committees. And I said, just you know, go out, fill out the form and whatever. I think he might have jotted, you know, a few committees, but one of them was the Social Inclusion Committee. Everybody else on the Social Inclusion Committee has a vested interest. They're working in an organization, or except for one other member. Everybody else, except for myself and Councillor Richard and another member who's a lawyer in town but does not have any specific, everybody else has a vested interest. They fit under A, B, C, D, and E. But that Yves Béliveau and the other, the lawyer, don't have any. So if we just stuck with A, B, C, D, and E, we wouldn't select them. That's the risk that I don't want to take. They are excellent members of the committee, but they may not have been sitting on the committee because they don't fit either A, B, C, D, or E. That's my argument. I don't want to miss out on people who don't have expertise. Don't know if that answers
Yeah,
the question.
it does, but I don't know what we're voting on fixes that.
We're adding an F that sort of says, and any other person interested that don't meet A, B, C, D, and E.
Okay, thanks.
I don't want to prolong this debate, but I think that the list that we have there pretty well covers everything. Bring volunteers or profile, anyway. Donc, je sais pas, Daniel, je suis pas certaine qu'on va accomplir plus en ajoutant quelque chose d'autre.
Je
En
ne
tout
vais
cas,
pas répéter mon
so
argument. là, que-
do we vote on this?
C'est ça?
On a une motion, so we're going to vote, show of hands, Madame la Greffière. So, in favor
In favor of the amendment?
of the amendment.
Against.
Combien?
Against.
Okay, so those who are against the motion, show of hands. So how many, je sais pas combien il y en a là?
Can't abstain.
So can we show again those who are in favor of the motion. And remember, there are how many councillors present? So what's the,
There's 7 of us.
We have the quorum.
we have quorum, so we need how many? Four to vote in favor. So those in favor of the motion, the amendment.
Councillor Bourgeois, Councillor Legier, Councillor Kingston.
3. So the motion failed, right?
Yes.
C'est beau. Merci beaucoup. Madame, conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci, Madame la Maire. Thanks for this. At least I get the motion out. The second one I don't agree with is that, diversity includes language. We are an officially bilingual community. We either put up or shut up. It's not the same as multiculturalism or other representation. I would have no problem as to us seeking 50% women. I think that's all already done, but if not, I would have no problem. And, 40% of the members be francophones. So I don't agree that language is considered when appointing individuals in the same way that a policy would force us to have 50% women, 40% francophones. So I'm going to make an amendment, I'm proposing an amendment that we, in order to reflect not the diversity, but the official bilingual status of the city, that at least 33% of the members of the committee are francophones.
Do I have a seconder for that? Conseiller Léger. So do we proceed with the votes? Nick?
I just wanted to clarify, when we talk about, when we talk about diversity in the policy, I think the language that we use is that we strive to meet the 50/30 DEI guidelines. So would it be acceptable to use the same language to say that we'll strive to meet a 33% representation of francophones on the committee?
As a francophone, and it's nothing personal, I take offense to being called part of the diversity. We are an officially bilingual community, French and English. That is different, and I don't want to say superior, but we are legally obligated to provide bilingual services, but we have a bylaw, or a policy that we adopted in 2002, well before my time, that we are an officially bilingual city. That, aside from the diversity, is different. So I think we need to refer to it as something different.
So I totally understand that. I'm not trying to lump it into diversity. I'm just trying to think of, could there ever be a scenario where we can't meet that 33%? And does that mean that we then can't move forward with that committee? So that's why I was just thinking about the strive to meet. But if council wants to just have it as 33% regardless, minimum, we can do that too. We can put that language in and see what happens.
Donc, conseiller Bourgeois, est-ce que vous voulez ajouter quelque chose d'autre? Non?
Un amendement qu'on a.
Oui, c'est ça. Donc, elle est appuyée par le conseiller Léger. So we have a motion, an amendment by conseiller Bourgeois. Est-ce que vous pouvez me la traduire en anglais? Peux-tu la dire en anglais?
That we reflect 33% of our bilingual committee members on the ABCCs.
And I think that this is directly linked to the 3 founding nations as well, so it's important to never forget that. Donc,
But I think the diversity
Oui.
includes First Nations,
Oui.
whereas official language is officially
c'est vrai.
bilingual. That's different.
bon. Okay, so we'll go to the, conseiller Butler.
Yeah, I just want to know, is that, what happens if we don't, not able to? Is this when possible? Is that how you'd like to have it? I'd like to have one possible. What if we, we have a committee and a number of them are just, they don't show. I agree with the premise that it should be, 33 or whatever number you want to come up with, but what if it's down to 30? Do we not do the committee or 25? I think that, I agree with you, but there could be a circumstance where we don't have it. So where does that leave us? Not to form a committee or?
Sure, just reduce the number of anglophones.
Right.
We'll get that 33%.
Well, I never thought of the percentage, but yes, we could do that.
Okay.
So, all right, I'm good with it then.
So we have an amendment. We're going to go to the vote. It's a show of hands, Madame La Greffière? Okay. Those in favor? Oh, it's, merci, it's unanimous. Thank you so much. Merci, Madame La Greffière. Conseiller Bourgeois, je vais vous appeler Monsieur le greffier, là, ça continue. Okay.
Je suis pas payé autant, mais... Without pork. My next one is about staff. Maybe it's the way that it's done now, but it's not necessarily the way that it should be done. If these are, and I'm not about all of the ABCCs, staff's role in especially the external ABCCs, I would have no problem with it. But the preliminary step of vetting applications for qualified nominees is an operational responsibility. I disagree. If council does establish committees of council, as I said from the get-go, these are our committees. I don't mind staff collecting the applications and then printing them out or whatever, sending them, but it should not be vetted, as happened with the planning committee a couple of years ago, where staff decided to nominate this particular person, which caused all of this controversy because that person had obviously supported staff's recommendation. So I want to minimize so I'm not sure how vetting is defined, what specific steps involved in vetting, collecting the information, and then giving it to the mayor or committee of them that the mayor would like to appoint. So I disagree with staff's comment that the preliminary step of vetting, maybe collecting the application, that's one thing, but to vet the applications and decide who qualifies and who doesn't, I think belongs to council or to the
May
mayor.
I just share with all of you the experience that I've had with the Bilingualism Committee? I did not see the list of those who applied. This was, I was so impressed by Melanie, I forget her second name, and Aloma. They did all of the work, and thank God they did, because half of the people on that applied, I had no idea who they were really. And they also had a system de pointage, which helped me. So, I thought it was I really, really appreciated the work that they did. That's me on this committee. So I don't know how it was done in the past, so.
So why was staff determining the points?
Come on.
Why was it up to staff to determine what points to give to this, to that? That should have been your job, to say, these are the kind, or council's job, as to what kind of committee members we want, what the points are. And then maybe staff can vet and say, all right, da-da-da-da.
I really did not have anything to do with the point
That's my
system,
point.
so.
It shouldn't be up to staff, but if the council are okay with staff vetting,
Monsieur le Gérant.
So I guess I wanted to address this because, at the end of the day, the policy determines, the policy provides direction on process. When a committee is established by council, it's given a mandate and an overall goal and objective and so on. The role of staff in vetting is really about collecting the information, reviewing the applications based on the policy, to ensure that the individuals meet the criteria of the policy, i.e. ensuring the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, the language criteria, all those elements that bring forward those candidates, then makes recommendations to the mayor to create her list of nominees. Those are based on those criteria and those criteria alone. It's not meant to review politically one way or the other why this individual, that person's position on another file or whatnot. It's really about applying the policy to the individuals that have all voluntarily put their names forward to sit on these committees. So I think that there might be there is a lot of work that is done in reviewing 20, 30, 40 applications, resumes, and requirements or reasoning why they want to sit on a board or on a committee. Therefore, the role, how I see it and how it's written, our role is to go through those to provide then the mayor's office, whose role is to develop the list of nominees and to share it with council for consideration. I don't, in no manner is this meant to be a biased or directed to set an agenda. It's really around the criteria that have been set by council on the role of the committee, as well as the individuals as when we mirror them to the policy. So that's why it's identified as an operational piece, as administration does on many other files about providing advice to council.
So as a compromise, would it be okay if the mayor determined the point system for the criteria?
Absolutely. Okay. When the committees are established, maybe it's Shelley or perhaps Nick, I think there is a certain aspect of it that's already identified as what kind of profiles we're looking for individual members, with the idea that 40% is for skills or expertise, 30% for such and such. I think there's already a percentage of that, is it not?
We do that for the Order of Moncton, for example, so.
As long as there's the mayor, a political figure, approves, staff can suggest, 10 points for this, 15 points, but it would be a mayoral decision to say, no, I think we should have 25% for this and 10% for that. And then they can vet the candidates.
And I think maybe Aloma can confirm, did we not do that for the bilingualism committee? The point system?
But as long as the point system was determined by the mayor, that's what I want.
That specific that it was 10% for so-and-so, but there was a list of, say, 6 or 8 different criteria, and they were checking to see which people had them, but which people had which things, but there was kind of a list to try to make sure that overall the candidates, that you would have people that had some of those things, because not every person's going to have 8 things, so you want to make sure that you have, at the end of the day, the final candidates have all of those requirements are reflected.
And in this case, Conseiller Bourgeois, if I had been deciding on the points, I would have put the highest points to someone who has worked on bilingualism.
But that should be up to you.
Oui?
Okay, as long as the mayor can have flexibility in the point system. I'll continue until it is told to stop. Section 3.3, the review of an ABC. If a member of an ABC violates this policy, council may review and investigate the violation. Council may take actions it deems, but not limited to suspension, termination. It says this is beyond the scope of this policy. My screen keeps disappearing. Where do we address this if it's not this policy?
So, sorry, I'm just trying to follow the question here.
So I think page 2.
Yeah, I know,
page
I
3.
have it,
Oh.
I'm just kind of reading it. So, council is given the authority to investigate a violation to this policy. Should not council also be given the authority to investigate a violation of other or all city policies? So, I'm trying to determine the context of your question here. I see you have an example. I mean, we have a code of conduct for elected officials. which
Right,
would apply
and
to other people.
a couple of years ago, we had an issue about a member of an ABC that the city of Moncton appointed to, a member who made derogatory comments against a member of council. We brought it up, and we said, well, we were told by the mayor at the time, it's not this code of conduct that applies, it's the ABC's code of conduct that applies, even if it was a member that this council had appointed. We were told we can't remove, so with this policy, we would
I
be
think that was a
able to-
very specific situation.
True.
And it's, I think it was beyond what we could deal with here.
Why not? This is a person that council approved nomination by the mayor to that body.
Right, but I
At the
mean,
time,
I
we
can't-
debated, like, doesn't our code of conduct apply? And we were told no.
No, because there was a legislated item there that we couldn't deal with, and I can't really talk about it today. My recollections, if
Okay.
it's the one that I'm thinking of, I
So
really can't
hypothetically,
discuss it.
if in the future, with this policy, somebody we appoint to an ABCC out there, or even our own committees, that would make a derogatory comment that would be an infraction of our code of conduct, we could terminate that person's appointment.
Unless there's a legislated reason why we can't.
Okay. Perfect. Will that be in the policy? That we can't terminate if it's a legislator, but if it's not legislator, we can, or is that clear enough?
Subject to because the policy says, subject to the governing documents and practices regulating
Okay.
each external ABC.
Perfect.
I think we have,
You say that there's a review, this would be under item 5, a review of all ABCCs is to be completed at the end of each council mandate. So this was not done in 2021, was it?
we didn't have this policy in 2021.
Right, but there was nothing else? There was no,
No.
okay, all right. So from now on, it's not just, because all newbies come in, they don't know any better that, so as long as there's a review moving forward, good. Too bad it wasn't done in 2021. Dissolving an ABCC, the review of ABCCs is done at the end of each council mandate. Reviewed by whom? Is it council? It seems to be driven by administration. So the new council that comes in next June, amongst their first meetings or so, is basically saying, here are the ABCs to which we are sort of forced to appoint somebody, but how do you want to create, how many committees do you want? Do you want committee of the whole? They'll have that discussion then? And here are the committees that existed under the previous mandate. Do you want to carry them forward? Is that how it works? Or is it basically staff that review this during the in-between time and then make a recommendation to council?
Sorry, my eScribe just crashed. I'm just trying to get the document back up. Shelley, did you have any information about that while I'm finding it?
Dissolving an ABCC, or who's going to review it? According to the policy at the moment, it is, this exercise should be led by the lead administrator or as designated by the city's chief administrative officer. So we can change the wording to council, however, which council?
Which
The outgoing or the new
the
council?
new council comes in, they might have a different take on committee of the whole and how many committees they want, what kind of committees they want. I mean, if it is council decision to create committees and appoint the members, it should be the new council that sits down and say, one of the items you have to decide is whether or not you want committees. Here are the ones that are compulsory, like the CRPA. We have to name somebody there. But we had a social inclusion committee, we had an enhancing democracy. You could go through the list. Do you still want to have those? The review must not be conducted by staff.
Yeah, no,
It's gotta
and I,
be council.
I think that's the intent with this section, where we're talking about how it happens with each council mandate. We would obviously bring those to council and say, you know, here are the committees that exist today, here's what their mandate is, these ones have completed their mandate, these ones have not, here's our recommendations for what continues, here's our recommendations for what can be dissolved.
True, but there's a sentence that says, this exercise should be led by lead administrator,
Okay.
which I assume to be the CAO.
Or the individual appointed to that committee, such as social inclusion committee and so on. So again, as Nick indicated, I think the intent here would be that the individuals that are or assigned to that committee would, before council, explain the role of the committee, what they've done, what they need to be, or what's on the agenda, and again, request or recommend to council either to continue or disband such a committee, and allow council to debate and discuss how they would wish. Because again, I think as you indicated earlier on, if we have new councilors that don't have that experience of why that committee or so on, that's why the administration contact for that committee would then, I guess, in our planning side of it, would then provide that information for council for their debate, discussion, and then decision one way or the other.
Okay, maybe it's in the wording of it. The exercise should be facilitated by lead administrator.
Oh, sure.
But it's council who should be reviewing.
Yeah,
The committee-
well, I think that's the intent. The intent is that the review would be done by council, and they would make the final decision on,
That might be the intent, that's not what it says, though.
okay, we'll
Tweak it.
tweak it.
Okay. I think, well, you raised a good point on 7, the mayor's role, and Councillor Butler addressed to it. This is a political decision that should be determined by council. We have to figure out the nomination process and what I don't have any better solution, but, you know, if we can find it, that's great. If not, it's just common sense that the mayor would be careful in the nominations, because even if the mayor, the council has the last vote, if it comes to the last vote, knowing that some councillors will be voting against, it will create some sort of stir, but that's democracy. I think that's it. Yep. Merci, Madame.
That's it. Merci, conseiller Bourgeois. What's the last item?
So we do,
Strategic plan. Nick,
no.
Oh, I think we still have a motion here.
Yeah, there's a motion that, so the motion as amended.
Je m'excuse. Donc, c'est un amendement de conseiller Bourgeois encore?
Non.
So
Il y
we-
avait une motion originale qui était,
So,
oui,
Motion as amended?
Correct.
okay.
yes,
So we're going to vote
electronically.
on the motion as amended. Does everyone understand what the amendment is? Everyone does? Okay.
Yeah.
C'est beau.
Just going to check and see. Okay. Okay. Conseiller Léger est pas présent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oui, on a encore le quorum. Puis Richard Crosman n'est pas en ligne. Puis conseiller Régette a laissé. So we can close the vote. Vote. It was
The motion
unanimous.
is carried.
Yep. Okay,
See?
so next.
Strategic.
Yes, strategic plan update. Nick will Well, actually, I think that Serge is going to take the lead on this one.
Merci, Madame la Greffière. Thank you, Shelley. I guess this agenda item, I guess, is the next step within the strategic planning exercise. We all recall we had a working session back in August where the strategic plan priorities were further refined. There's a bit of a selection process where council had a chance to provide a bit more clarity on priorities within the strategic plan. So I guess some of the following steps will then to be determined KPIs, align budget towards those priorities, and so on and so forth, and start and continue to report on progress. So I've asked Claude, who is there, help to facilitate the session, who will walk through the presentation, but again, it's reflective of the priorities set by council back in August. Claude.
Bonsoir, Claude.
Bon après-midi, tout le monde. Good afternoon. As obviously you're aware, in December of 2024, Council approved the strategic plan. And just a reminder, the plan is comprised of 5 pillars. There's 15 goals and 39 strategic initiatives within the plan itself that formulates that. Donc, les piliers sont environnement, sûreté et sécurité, économie, gouvernance, culture et loisirs. Les objectifs du pilier de l'environnement sont réduire les émissions nettes de gaz et effets de serre et d'autres formes de pollution, s'adapter au changement climatique et gérer et rehausser les actifs naturels. As you'll recall, under the safety security goal, there's deliver effective protective services, support and advocate for affordable housing, and also to create a safe environment. Under the economy, the 3 main goals are to attract and retain business investment in the city, support sustainable development and population growth, and as well to make sure we continue to strategically invest in our infrastructure as we continue to grow as a city. Au niveau du pilier de gouvernance, les objectifs sont veiller à ce que l'organisation soit bien gérée et responsable, accroître et diversifier la collaboration des intervenants et la participation des résidents, et finalement investir dans les employés et dans l'innovation. And finally, under culture and recreational pillar, we have support and embrace culture, heritage, and bilingualism, deliver exciting and engaging programs and events, and as well enhance and invest in our public spaces. Just want to remind Council, back in August, Council had an opportunity to rank their priorities based on the strategic initiative priorities themselves, and there were 6 who kind of claimed the top spot within the 39 identified strategic initiatives within the plan. One thing I'd like to emphasize is that administration will continue to deliver on the entire strategic plan. However, Council's identified priorities will be given extra attention when competing interests or resources may come to light, and make sure we align them towards more of those top 6 priorities of Council. And those 6 priorities, as obviously you're aware of, is to deliver effective protective services, promouvoir et encourager la culture, le patrimoine et le bilinguisme, reduce greenhouse gas emission and other forms of air pollution, créer un environnement sécuritaire, invest in employees and innovation. So now, for the next steps, it's going to be to align the strategic plan and Council's priorities with the budget process. Also, to bring forward to Council the strategic plan outcomes, key performance indicators, and target. So council have kind of set the tone of what they'd like to see to be done. Administration will come forward to how we're going to be doing those things, how we're going to measure that to make sure we're moving those items forward that council have determined to be a priority, along with all the others within the strategic plan itself. And then finally would be examiner les niveaux de service pour identifier les domaines à améliorer. So we currently have levels of service. The corporate strategic plan, or the strategic plan itself, has quite a few measurements in them, which will kind of become the majority of the levels of service. However, there's others a bit more on the operational side that we're going to look at to try to define them a bit better and to make them a bit more meaningful and measurable to be able to include that with council and during the budget process itself. And that's just the quick version of it. And obviously, Serge and the rest of the GMs are here, and myself, if there's any questions regarding those.
Merci,
Merci.
beaucoup, Claude. We have a motion before us. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Conseiller Bourgeois, do you wish to move? Oui? Oui.
Comment.
Seconded by Conseiller Butler. Merci. So, Conseiller Bourgeois.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la maire. Merci, Claude. Merci, Serge. Merci, l'équipe. Je n'ai pas de problème avec la recommandation, mais c'est un commentaire. Puis ça s'adresse gérant, Jacques, finance, etc. Ça sera probablement trop tard, notre comité sur la sécurité publique. C'est la priorité numéro 1, je suis d'accord avec ça. Mais là, après ça, d'aligner ça avec nos budgets, là, ça ne sera jamais aussi simple que de dire, ah ben, la police puis les services de protection représentent 23,6% de notre budget, donc big time, c'est ça le numéro 1. C'est pas à vous autres à faire ça, là, mais est-ce qu'on a the best bang for our buck pour ce 26, 29 millions, whatever? Ça sera malaisé à faire. Je sais pas comment est-ce que vous allez le faire pour le budget. Essayez de votre mieux, mais voici la question concrète. Le CRPA va venir nous demander pour un certain nombre de policiers. La GRC nous demande pour un différent nombre de policiers. Combien d'agents communautaires, bylaw officers, si ça devient des peace officers qu'on aura besoin? Est-ce qu'on peut avoir des agents, des travailleurs sociaux qui vont travailler de la part de la province, qui vont travailler avec les sans-abri, puis les drogués, puis tout ça, parce qu'eux représentent 25%. C'est tout un dossier complexe. Je ne sais pas comment est-ce que dans un mois, dans 2 mois, vous allez pouvoir enligner toutes ces choses-là, là, pour dans un an d'asture, de dire, ah, on a baissé le taux de criminalité de ça. On a baissé les crimes sévères. On ne sait pas si c'est notre intervention budgétaire ou pas, mais le seul commentaire que je vous fais, c'est bonne chance, j'ai hâte de voir qu'est-ce que vous êtes capable de produire, là, parce que c'est pas donné, mais les gens s'attendent à ce qu'on aborde ça comme priorité. Le Conseil l'a confirmé. Les autres choses, il y en a des choses, reduce net greenhouse gas emissions, on peut mesurer ça. Je suis pas trop sûr qu'on a investi, ça c'est mon opinion personnelle, le bon montant d'argent, est-ce que c'est le meilleur impact? Mais peut-être que oui. C'est-à-dire, comment est-ce qu'on fait, combien de pourcentage qu'on réduit avec tel ou tel investissement versus un autre pour réduire l'émission de gaz. Attract and retain business and investment, pour moi, c'est probablement l'objectif le plus facile à mesurer. On va peut-être pas réussir, mais au moins, il y a des mesurables. Deliver effective, qu'est-ce qui est effective protective services? C'est-il plus d'agents de policiers? C'est ça que certaines personnes nous disent. C'est-il moins d'agents de policiers? Defund the police? C'est-il, je sais pas, là, on est ici comme des non-experts, vous autres aussi, jusqu'à un certain point, puis on se fie à des personnes qui sont supposément experts, mais qui nous arrivent avec 2 chiffres de policiers qui ont besoin. So, bonne chance, je vous fais confiance, mais soyez pas surpris qu'on va avoir un débat assez difficile. Merci encore une fois pour le travail, j'apprécie beaucoup. Merci, Madame la maire.
Merci, Conseiller Bourgeois. Monsieur le gérant, vous voulez répondre?
Merci. Puis merci pour la question parce que je pense que la prochaine étape, c'est une des plus importantes. The next steps will be one of the more important ones is determining exactly what to measure, how to measure to be able to provide the results that our citizens are expecting from the City of Moncton. So I know that there's been a lot of work done so far. I know that the team has been working on these elements since probably last May. and we'll continue to do so and be prepared to bring back to council exactly how we plan on reporting, what are the KPIs we will be, and again, hoping to get some reflection from council on if there are some that are missing, other indicators that could do, would better reflect what our success or not success, I guess. So stay tuned. I think the next parts will be extremely interesting on that. Je sais pas si tu voulais ajouter autre chose, Claude?
Non, merci.
Merci, Monsieur Gérard. So we have a motion that's been moved and seconded. I don't see any other questions, so we can go to the vote. Is it electronic? Oui.
You can close the vote.
Motion carried unanimously. Merci. I need someone to clore la réunion. Conseiller déjà. OK. C'est beau, merci. Bonne soirée, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.